Hey, welcome into the post game. Jeff Eisenband here with president of the one-time NBA champion Milwaukee Bucks, Peter Feigin. Maybe it'll be more than that. Before the end of this season or the end of the next few seasons.
Certainly before the end of my career, that's for sure.
And this is now your fourth season with the Milwaukee Bucks. Just some background on you. You worked for the Madison Square Garden Company, Six Flags, Marquee Jet, NetJets, Advantage, among other jobs. A lot of them based in New York. You're a New York guy. So how do you end up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in the NBA?
Pretty simply. So I happen to have an identical twin brother who's
Still
the head
doing
of,
all those jobs.
who's doing those jobs at the same time. No, actually, he took the 501c3 path and runs a school called Trevor Day School in New York City.
Yep.
And lo and behold, all of Mark Lazary and all of Wes Eden's kids went to Trevor Day School. And when they started to explore acquiring a team, Mark came to talk to me and said, "Hey, why don't you come and on my brother's suggestion, because my brother wants 50% of all the revenue that's been gathered since. Why don't you come with us to Milwaukee and do some due diligence with the team?" And I'm really kind of, my background on the sales and marketing and operations side was kind of that key quarterback kind of on that team. So as we went through the due diligence period, I really kind of represented Mark, and Wes had somebody representing him. And as we got further along, one of my jobs was to staff up the operation and really have a business plan. So I did kind of the Dick Cheney. I suggested a lot of people who would be great presidents, and lo and behold, none of them worked out to do it. So I think they had to default to me to run the company.
This is why you go to the parents' night, right? At school, so you can meet these guys.
That's right. How do you network in New York City private schools?
You go to parents' night, but then you end up going to Milwaukee. I mean, as a New Yorker, working as a business executive now in Milwaukee, what do you notice that's just different about the culture and the vibe you're trying to market?
Well, I'll tell you the biggest, and maybe this analogy makes sense and maybe it doesn't make sense. You will be in a business meeting on Monday with one of the 300 to 500 business executives in the town, and you will see them somewhere, someplace later that week or the week after, unlike in New York City. So there is an equity portion of a relationship, a trust, a relationship, and really kind of, a long-term kind of thinking when you're dealing with people. So it really was for us, like on the relationship and interpersonal side, we had to attack the business like one-on-one, blocking and tackling, build equity, build trust, engage, which is a lot different than you might do in other markets.
So you show up in 2014. What team are you working with right here? What are you looking at? It'd been a struggle for the franchise for the better part of a decade. What do you come across when you open the book and see what the team looks like on paper?
Well, I think you're coming across what a lot of NBA teams have come across. That they've kind of been owned by, by families, by smaller individuals, and not really embraced kind of this world's organization, process, and kind of growth strategy. So we saw a company with probably a little bit over 80 employees, probably infrastructured really around basketball and to get the lights on in the arena, and probably a little less advanced on fan acquisition, on retention, on digital engagement, on media strategy, and really brand strategy, and like how to grow a business and how to grow a brand. So we had this unbelievable opportunity to really take this team, a 50-year-old team that had won an NBA championship, that had had guys like Oscar Robinson and Kareem and Ray Allen and Michael Redd with an unbelievable heritage, and almost rip it down to the studs and like build it up as a startup.
But they did have good arena cheese, I'm assuming, when you got there.
Cheese and beer. There's no question. Like, you cannot refine, improve the current cheese and beer. If you touched it, you knew you were in the wrong job. And
so, I mean, you show up. It is, a guy got there a year before you, Giannis Antetokounmpo, which
yes.
I don't know if I botched the pronunciation.
No, I give that a B plus, A minus. If you get it's polysyllabic, so it's tough. But you did the tutu, which is key.
I'm just sure
yes.
You looked in the mirror and recited it a million times before you met him in person.
I've said it a lot of times. I've coached announcers on it a lot of times. I think people are finally getting it. And we know the reality of 18 months ago, nobody would have said Giannis was one of the 5 best players in the NBA to go. So we've had like really what we call the Giannis effect. So very simply, we did what you think you did. We went into the market and said, hey, we're going to build this market. We're going to build it locally, regionally, nationally, and then internationally. And then we're going to be the #1 team in the league. To be the brand representation, because that's how you think when you do it. All of a sudden, 12 months ago, that went upside down, And with Giannis, it literally went international, national, regional, local, which is a great turnaround for us. But there's no way even us that are so close to it thought 18 months ago we'd have this type of Giannis effect.
Yeah, I think there's two sides to this marketing Giannis. One, internally, a giant, lanky kid from Greece all of a sudden is living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which had to have been, I know you got there his second year, has to be a bit of culture shock for a guy. But then back, because you have this international player, you're able to market around the world. So what's that whole experience been like, incorporating him internally into the city and then externally to all of the world, especially Europe?
Well, it's great because we'd love to take a lot of credit for it. Giannis, though, is a guy who's publicly said he wants to live in Milwaukee for 20 years. He brought his family there. He lives there year round. He's got his brothers and his parents, there from the start, which is just incredible. So he's built that local culture. He's embraced it, which is unbelievable leverage when you're positioning a city like Milwaukee to other people. Here are the best resources. By the way, there are no more small markets in the NBA when you have a superstar. So how do you take all those great attributes, like a great city, easy to live in, unbelievable resources and training center, and then kind of family oriented? And Giannis is the poster child, to get that done. And then internationally, the growth is insurmountable. Like, you can't imagine. We are just literally scraping the surface of what this can come, because of course you've got Greece, but really Asia is mesmerized by Giannis. And how do we capture that, both digitally, on broadcast? How do we think about marketing around the world?
Yeah, do you have any, I don't know, maybe good stories about a fan from God knows what country, inquiring about, I want to be a Milwaukee Bucks fan, how can I get merchandise, how can I, are you sensing that around the world?
Every day. I mean, I think that the most incredible aspect is, here's a guy who now we have to monitor and figure out and organize the groups that travel from Greece to away games and have meet and greets after the game, which, by the way, aren't scheduled. They just have to be huge group buys of 200, 300 people with the Greek flags behind the visiting bench, like the Bucks, at away games. I mean, that's kind of a surreal experience in an NBA arena.
So we're about to go see the arena. We're about to take a tour here with my guy and boss, Feigin. It's gonna be fun.
This will be fun. You're going to be blown away.
It's gonna be fun.
Good for Giannis. He gets a new house next year. You guys have a new arena coming in. No name yet, but I know you've been inside walking around with a hard hat. What can you tell us about what we're looking at there?
I think state of the art, which for us is, of course, think of everything from like the experience of the fans. So it's going to be a blow away experience beyond expectations for anybody who's been to a pro sporting event in the state of Wisconsin, that's for sure. And then we really want it to be a model for around the world. So we've had, like, the last 2 years to take best practices from so many great arenas, whether it's Barclays, Orlando, Sacramento, which just opened up like last year, and really work with the league in like a great way to really experience it. We've made it intimate with 17,500 crowd. We've made it really authentic and localized with what our food and beverage offerings are going to be, and it's really best of class. So this is one of these places we want to be a magnet around the world, and not just basketball. We'll have our 50 games when we win an NBA championship, but we'll have another 150 events that are the world's greatest concerts and family shows and events, which we're really excited to bring to Wisconsin.
I mean, how, you would expect this to be a decades-long arena when you're building it, so how do you set that standard that this is still going to look innovative in, say, 30 years from now?
Well, we've kind of blended it into the skyline. So this is not a spaceship. You can't build a spaceship in the middle of downtown Milwaukee. It's got such incredible, authentic architecture. It's really got to bleed in. If you've seen the designs, we've used a patinaed zinc and kind of a sloping roof to really give it a unique, unbelievable feel, and it's completely contrasted by transparency. So they're huge glass walls that you kind of look in and look out, and so it's kind of one of those wow buildings without being a spaceship, is how I explain it to my mother, to go around. So it is one of those special kind of blend in but unique buildings that will last a lifetime.
I just called right now, the Wisconsin events, sports, whatever it is right now. We know you've publicly said that you're looking for a deal of 7 to 10 million over 20 years, per year, 7 to 10 million from a sponsor. I mean, I'm looking around. BMO Harris Bank is the current sponsor of the old arena. That's a bank. Harley Davidson is the jersey sponsor. There's a lot of ways to go with this, and I know you guys are expecting an announcement in early 2018. But one thing that you've said that's interesting to me is that you're not looking necessarily for a localized brand. You might be looking for an international brand to sponsor this new arena. So what's that process been like?
Well, you know better than anybody that this game is so global, and it's the difference between hockey, football, baseball. It's kind of where the growth curve is of NBA. So we have this value proposition that is so different that when you buy into and partner with an NBA team, you've got an international platform. So logic is you'd go to a bigger swatch of land of potential prospects for naming rights, and even if you have a localized company, you'd pretty much have to assume they have global aspirations, or they have a global presence to really leverage kind of where our media is. Today the NBA is broadcast in 215 countries around the world. All of our games are due just the awareness, the impressions, and everything. So for us, we went out international and globally to begin with. That's not to say, hey, we won't end up with a global company in the Midwest that will do it. But we think it's one of those opportunities. It's one of 30 teams. It's the only one out in the market now. And people, especially media and brand people, are understanding what the value proposition of entitling an NBA arena is.
Now, I went to a college at a far-off land called Evanston, Illinois.
I've heard of Northwestern.
Which is in the a stone's throw away from Milwaukee. And when I was there, I thought to myself, if traffic is bad in Chicago, which it tends to be, could I get to Milwaukee before I could get to the southwest suburbs of Chicago, or not southwest side of Chicago where the United Center is? Now, maybe Evanston is too far south, but how are you guys trying to market maybe into Illinois for this new arena?
Well, just look at population base. I mean, we'll leave Evanston, take Lake Forest, right? It's a coin flip, to downtown Chicago, to downtown Milwaukee. So how do you really leverage, and if you're creating that magnet for sports entertainment and you're looking at population base, how do you not go to northern Illinois, go to southeastern Wisconsin to really grab those folks and kind of give them a new experience? So we think certainly on the basketball side there's an opportunity, and even greater opportunity on the entertainment side, and what we're creating as ease of use. Like Milwaukee is not the huge metropolitan city that Chicago is, so to get people from northern Illinois to drive into Milwaukee is not that tough of a thing to do, and we will position kind of that ease of use to get them there.
My one Milwaukee Bucks experience was I went to Game 4, the first round against the Bulls. The Bucks down 3-0 in the series, and Jared Bayless hit a game-winning layup.
Jared Bayless, I remember that. Quick steal, quick layup, and now at Philly doing fine. Yeah, no, those are, first of all, if you can pit Chicago, Milwaukee, because it really is one of the rare competitions. We've been trying to manufacture a Minnesota, but Chicago's it, and I think Chicago experiences it. We see it when the Brewers play the Cubs, it kind of comes in. So those teams pitted together are great for both of us. We love it.
I mean, the Brewers moved leagues, so that was a competition that developed. They would have had the White Sox in the American League. Also, the scoreboard. This seems to be the new in arenas. This is the standard. You have the Falcons one-upping the Cowboys. And now when we go to the NBA, what are we looking at for your guys' new video board?
You're looking at the sharpest aspect ratio you've ever seen. So, it again goes to the next level of people are literally looking at, it looks like a high-def television in your living room, and you're now looking at it from an arena, point of view. And I think all the great aspects, and for us, we dug so deep into it. So think of the undercarriage of the arena and how you're able to look at stats, from the first 6 rows. Like, what's the aspect ratio and the sight lines, from the suites to get it done. It's important. It is in our arena. It's going to be to scale. It's not going to be one of these monstrosities that kind of go from baseline to baseline, but it will be blow away kind of fun and exciting, and kind of what you can do now with graphics, what you can do with animation, and how you can link it in to second screen when people are in the arena with their phones. It's kind of that next generation, so it'll be fun.
When yes, that second screen is. I remember the first time they ever put, you could text to a scoreboard. I mean, that actually brings up a good point about fan engagement. What are you guys working for in arena, outside arena, in terms of digital in the future?
Well, digital is kind of like what we own. It's our content, it's our distribution. We're a small market, but we're like within the top 5 of the NBA in engagement per thousand. We are like so heavy on kind of really attractive, great content. It helps to have, Giannis videos getting millions of hit. But digital is, by no mistake, and you know it from what you do for a living, it's the real-time engagement, in the voice, and dialogue with the fans. So we think we're not even scratching the surface of what digital becomes. And the truth is, our digital channels, are 10x like what our local broadcasts are in Fox Sports. So it's interesting to explain that to people. We do more during the week between games than actually the game broadcast, on a local basis. So how do you leverage that? How do you make it exciting? How do you create the Bucks and other NBA teams as a lifestyle, brand and make it attractive that you're sticky with all these folks, like, throughout a 12-month period.
When you're watching a game, I don't know if you go to every game, you're watching at home, how are you intaking that content? Do you have Twitter up? Do you have social media up?
I do not have Twitter up. I probably watch it on a large screen if it's a road game, and have NBA.com or League Pass on at the same time just to see other games going. I'm not a good guy to watch a game with.
You're like a scout, it sounds like.
Yeah, I had like several people over for dinner like the other night to watch a road game, against New Orleans, and it was I wish I hadn't had them over for dinner. You just want to be angry when you're losing by yourself. You want to be doing it, but it's an interesting position because you really have to game face, a lot, especially at home games, kind of where it's going. But it is a long marathon. 82 games, in a season. There's so many ups and downs, and we have a very young team. So I think it kind of makes it the greatest job in the world because I'm a basketball fan. I can't believe I get paid to watch NBA games to a certain degree. So it's kind of fantasy driven as well.
Oh, that's nice. And you spent 82 games, you get the playoffs, and now you might even have more to watch. Bucks Gaming, esports is now. You guys have an esports team. What are you an esports guy? Are you going to be watching these games?
I'm not. I have a 14-year-old boy who can basically tell me every single player in the NBA as well as the G League, tell me what Europeans are playing, what YouTube channels are in high school, all through NBA 2K. Basically, to get it done. He plays the Bucks 95% of the time, so it's fun to watch John Horst.
You seen that, or he tells you?
Oh no, I see it. I watch it, which is an interesting stat because all of us, kind of between the ages of 40 and 55, all have kids who play and rationalize now what this is. Because it used to be 5-10 years ago, the parents didn't know what was going on, and now this is real. So we've been explaining NBA 2K. It's almost like the digital, instantaneously overnight. We have 30 million people playing NBA 2K around the world, probably more. So we begin a league, and we have competition on a global basis. This again becomes a platform of an NBA brand extension that just explodes with engagement, with real engagement. And I have to explain, I explained to my mother, well, you don't get it. Like, why would anybody watch this? And I'm like, oh, everybody would watch it because it's a competition, and those who play it recreationally want to be professionals. So how do they watch best practices and go nuts? So we think NBA 2K League is going to be just beyond expectations and really explode over the next 2 years. It's why we opted in.
Yeah, I mean, when did you know, just maybe before you were even president of the Bucks, while you were, that, this is a big deal, this video game. This isn't just something that people do as a hobby. This is big for our sport.
I probably remember 4 or 5 years ago in South Korea, there was a League of Legends, streaming broadcast that somebody had said, or maybe it came over the ticker, as had like an audience of 27 million or 30 million, and I thought it was a mistake. And it was one of the things you had to click through to see it. And I think that moment, and the moment that the Garden probably had a tournament like 3 years ago, and I've been to 3 or 4 events now. So I always tell people, if you don't believe it, like, go. It's UFC, it's like boxing. If people have never experienced it, go. Like, go see this culture, go into it, see how ridiculous, and viral and passionate like this fan base is. Same kind of group. Everybody's buying apparel, they're buying food, they don't want to leave, and in these gaming tournaments, it's a 6-10 hour event. at it. So I got very excited. Those are all like in the sports entertainment kind of retailing business. I mean, that's gold, that exists.
Yeah, I mean, we got to get you playing more first of all. But you said you guys opted in. 17 teams opted in. There are obviously 30 NBA teams. I know Mark Cuban had said, "Oh, I'm going to buy everyone who doesn't make a team." He didn't do that. But why wouldn't teams opt in? And was there ever a conversation of why we shouldn't do this?
I think it happened pretty quickly, like on the administrative side. So it was really one of those choices. I mean, all teams have lots of things going on, kind of all the time. And I think it's where the awareness is kind of on the digital side. So you really had to make a commitment. We had a distinct advantage in Wes Edens, who's one of our owners, happened to be on the Board of Governors committee of, for e-gaming. So we kind of had the inside, knowledge of where this was going and kind of the timing of it, and prepared a little bit. But I think year one was, you had to opt in like a little bit risky and not knowing what this would be and kind of the timing and everything else. And there's a monetary commitment, there's a staffing commitment, there's an execution. I mean, we'll have an infrastructure of 10 people in a company of e-gaming, and 5 or 6 of those people we house, we train, we manage. So it's building a team. And for us, we just opened up a G League team this fall too. So we are, kind of rolling very quickly.
You're gonna be like team dad of Bucks Gaming, coming down, nourishing this team, and which I assume obviously it will be. You got to wire this new video board to NBA 2K so fans and people can come in and just, or you can just play in your.
Well, for us, like we think it's a little bit bigger, and again, it's like local, but we're building like a 30-acre neighborhood, and some of that is a plaza where we've got entertainment and retail areas, and like we're certainly going to build gaming lounges. So we are certainly going to entice people. I think, our ownership and kind of directionally. I mean, we think the new sports bar is certainly about watching games, certainly about watching soccer, on Saturdays and football on Sundays and basketball every day. But we also think it's going to niche out and have an e-gaming portion of it. So how do you design those kind of areas to do it and to promote, specifically our brands?
And one thing you can't build a new arena, and you can't build this new mini community without talking to politicians about it. So what was your experience dealing with certain Wisconsin politicians, Scott Walker being one in particular, in terms of getting everything done?
So we didn't have much time, and we had to build a new arena, or we're going to move the team. That was
that's
kind
not
of
good.
That was like the value proposition, to get it done. So, and we had an interesting thing in the state of Wisconsin. When you're in the city of Milwaukee, you actually deal with the state, you deal with the county, and you deal with the city on all different levels. So for us, which were very polarized at the time, on both sides of the aisle, and we were time-wise like kind of lucky. I mean, Scott Walker was just at the beginning of a presidential campaign. He wanted to keep the team in it, which was like a big catalyst for the whole movement. So we had legislation passed outside of a state budget, which is another challenge to get done. We were able to purchase a swatch of 20 acres from the county to kind of make it complete, and signed a development deal with the city to actually be able to build on that. And I explained it as our distinct advantage was I had no idea, no skeletons, no history, no nothing in state, county or city government. So probably that helped in just staying focused, giving our narrative, and selling through the proposition of like, this has to happen. Here's the economic development side of the win when this does happen on a state and local side to get it done. But it was I can't even complain about it, because for us, it was a 10-month process, and I think, you've been around public-private financing of arenas. Some of them are 10 years.
That's why I'm surprised it worked so quickly. You mentioned not having skeletons. I'm going to paraphrase here. You've been quoted as saying that Milwaukee was the most racist and segregated place that you've lived. Did that create any skeletons in terms of, or how have you been being so open? How has that helped you deal with politicians and other people in the community?
Well, I think like we've been very straightforward and transparent, and I think those comments go around with like the recognition as an organization where, we are very cognizant of these issues are everywhere. In every city, in every place, you deal with, there are segregation issues, there are certainly race issues, gender issues, and for us, it's how we can affect change in our local area. And I think what we have the distinct advantage of as an NBA team is we happen to be the greatest melting pot in the history of the world in our physical arena, and our players happen to be unbelievable catalysts of change and social awareness. And how do we leverage that, in a really positive way?
Yeah, you were very vocal after John Henson had a profiling incident. How have you communicated different things to the players about, defending them in instances such as that?
So it's really tough. I mean, I'm not Jason, who's their coach, or John Horst, who's their GM. I feel kind of paternal because these guys are so young. And like, we really feel that, from day one, we're going to lay down like the foundation of like real direct communication and one-on-one resourcing. So, for us, it's having a close enough relationship where directly we can talk like right away. In today's world of pro athletes, if you have the ability to, much like if you had a teenage kid or someone in their young 20s, to actually count to 10, breathe, talk about it, and think about what a reaction would be, versus getting on Twitter, versus Snapchatting, what your impulsive reaction is, that's like a big difference. And that's just a kind of analogy to the way we really handle this. Like, we want to be smart about how we handle it as individuals, how we handle it as an organization, and make everything kind of a teaching lesson, for our guys, because it's much more than just having them as hired guns and players. Like, we think the more we can engage and integrate and be resources to them, the more equity we have with them to stay with us forever.
You mentioned Jason Kidd, someone who did not have a history with the Milwaukee Bucks, had played in cities such as New York, Dallas, big cities, has made a ton of money playing the sport of basketball. Why has he bought into, starting this with this young team, building from the ground up with it?
Well, I think Jason, opted in to be, a freshman teacher, and I don't know if he knew like what it was and like where his patients were, but I think he probably is like the most underappreciated coach, even though we've kind of been around 500, with this young team ever. This is the guy who put Giannis at point guard, at a time where Giannis really wasn't like the ball handling, point guard, but kind of had that vision, who kind of, stuck with Chris Middleton and, kind of moved the core of where we have it. But, Jason's day-to-day existence is patience, which is very tough for a Hall of Fame, top 10 guy to ever play, and didn't really need patience. Probably before he got to Cal, was ready to run, an organization on the floor and get it done. So he has systematically built an infrastructure, for growth and to have a core group of players to build around.
And Giannis, making Giannis a point guard essentially, deflates the old school point guard that he made his living on by changing this to, but he's recognizing, I guess, the innovation of basketball nowadays.
Totally is. I mean, he has that foresight. I mean, he's one of those anomalies. He's a basketball genius. I almost like can't talk basketball with him because I feel embarrassed because I know he's at a different level. Why am I talking to Jason Kidd about vision or kind of who's flopping up front or high post lip? I mean, Jason's forgotten more, than I'll ever know on that expert scale. But he is a phenomenal teacher. I don't know if he even knew what a great teacher he is in getting there. I wish, if he had a magic wand, he'd probably give a couple years of age to every one of our players just to get to the next level faster. But he has systematically kind of built and educated this team.
You being president of an organization, is there another president or executive that you've looked to as a mentor or someone who you really admire what they do?
I think they're unbelievable professionals, like in all different pockets. So I'm a big best practices guy. Like the way we looked at arenas, I kind of grab certain elements of all the arenas. I think, there's not a better business acumen guy than Scott O'Neill in Philadelphia and kind of the way he thinks and builds. I don't think there's a better professional in the world than Rick Welts, in Golden State, who kind of like with a calm, cool demeanor really is a sophisticated business acumen, growth kind of guy to get it done. I've had unbelievable advantage to before Arn Tellem was, his executive chairman, to know Arn when he was an agent. Now know Arn, is running the Detroit Pistons has been really a distinct advantage. And then, just friendships. I don't know if you could put a value on being able to lift up the phone and call the Fred Whitfields of the world in Charlotte and just say, am I crazy? What have you done? But that's the difference of the NBA, and we can never discount. The NBA is a collaborative. David Stern, Adam Silver after him. I mean, this is truly a collaborative. This is truly best practices. This is truly resourcing. We compete with each other on the court, but really, like locally, we don't really compete with each other, so we can grab best practices and experiences and save time, have an accelerator on kind of what return is. So that's what I think the big difference and the advantage of like the way the league is structured in the NBA.
Well, as I'm thinking, a former Buck, Brandon Jennings, was with the Knicks recently, and one of his teammates went to pick someone up, and he pulled him away. They're the enemy, let them get up. But it sounds like you guys at least are able to pick each other's brains in this league.
Not a question. I mean, I will tell you the generosity of the Chris Granger, who's now in Detroit, but was in Sacramento and really led the building of the Sacramento arena. I mean, literally selfless. I mean, Charlie down in Orlando and Brett Yermark in Brooklyn. I mean, complete selflessness. Like, any questions, any times, how do we save each other time? How do we understand, building? I think people, when we look at these jobs aren't just running an operation. These jobs become, facilities bound. They become experiential, marketing, media, experts, building and development experts. So it's this complex job that if anybody tells you they could master, on their own, I guarantee you they'd be lying. So how do you really gather all these resources?
No, you have a lot of responsibilities. I think people are they'll think about that arena,
Right.
It's going to be the front-facing thing for you. But also we have, right here, this is the 50th anniversary of the Bucks. Got a nice little book here. So what have you guys been doing to celebrate that this year?
So we took 12 months and just said, how do we encapsulate kind of the heritage? It's an unbelievable springboard and timing into the new arena. And we really wanted to, over the last 3 years, have just been trying to grab everybody within the fabric of the Bucks history. So how do we grab all of our alumni? How do we celebrate in games? How do we have heritage nights? We had a game at the Mecca, which was just kind of one of the surreal, great, unbelievable ideas that went to execution on like a national platform. So for us, like which we've always said, we've been kind of talking about embracing the past and kind of pushing towards the future, but these physical assets, these games, these engagements with the relationships, like with our former players and coaches, that is like literally the way we're get to do it on a 50th year anniversary.
Yeah, what's this guy like?
Kareem, probably the most thoughtful, engaging guy who's now like realized how the entire state of Wisconsin loves him and adores him and comes back regularly and engages with us, which is just truly like a blessing.
Which he's a kid from Brooklyn, from New York,
Power Memorial,
who's adopted Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Peter, are there any topics just before I let you go today that you have on the tip of your tongue about being president of an organization like the Milwaukee Bucks that you'd like to talk about?
No, I think it's time for the entire country to just embrace the Bucks as their go-to team. Get on before it becomes a bandwagon experience. We're having a lot of fun. We've got a kid who will be the next 10 years of this league, and we're going to surround him with championship caliber team around him.
If "Embrace the Bucks" is the 2018-2019 slogan, I expect some royalties on that. Peter Feigin here on the postgame with me, Jeff Eisenband.